So just as a recap, 503 is for service unavailable. And this is one of those tricky ones where there's a lot of causes. So I want to just give generic practical advice as well as what's a common cause. And then I'll link to some docs with like some follow-up reading for whoever's interested in it. So when I say like there's a lot of variables involved, one of the first things to do is try to identify what those are. Sometimes you'll have it where it's just one app that's giving these 503 errors versus all of them. And if you can narrow it down to that one app, sometimes you can just disable autoscaling for that one app. And sometimes it's like, oh, hey, we could spend a lot of engineering effort fixing this 504 or 503 error that happens on scale down, or we could just pay like $5 extra a month to keep this running 24/7. And then it's way more practical to just say, oh, screw it, we'll just disable the autoscaling. So another common thing beyond just the app is your ingress methodology, where sometimes it'll be GKE ingress that's happening with a custom ingress controller or Istio. And if you actually look at the Istio issue tickets, like 10% of their issue tickets are about 500 errors. So this is like just a common problem with Istio. And if it's a critical app, you're like, well, maybe we'll take this one out of the service mesh if it has to scale up and down a lot, or we'll just disable the auto scaling for this particular one. And then another really good generic strategy is in production, you might just be able to temporarily, or again, if it's cost effective, you could permanently disable the auto scaling and solve it that way. But you could temporarily disable auto scaling in production and then figure out how to predictably reproduce it in a staging environment by generating some load test type traffic. And if you can figure out how to predictably reproduce it, then you have a feedback loop. And then you can just start tinkering with different stuff in a safe staging environment and predictably reproduce those 503 errors. And then you can try something out, run your load test to get the feedback loop that if some tinkering that you're doing is working or not. And then one common thing that does solve it is there's a Kubernetes pod lifecycle hook called a pre-stop hook. And you can add a thing to sleep for like 30 seconds because a common reason why this happens is that the pod shuts down before the GCP load balancer has had a chance to deregister it from the backend. So when you do a pod pre-stop hook, it still tells the load balancer to deregister the pod from an available backend, but it gives it more time to shut down cleanly while the load balancer is registering it.